Welcome back to this week's episode of Mining the Comments. Today we'll look at why the timeless sleep window can be so beneficial for us during our insomnia journey. This week's question comes from Gaiopo79. Question is, if I get rid of hyperarousal, fear of insomnia, and anxiety, the timeless sleep window is supposed to help me sleep and wake up without feeling tired or exhausted. Well, let's maybe take a little deeper dive into understanding what the timeless sleep window is and why it can be so beneficial. Now, number one, the timeless sleep window has nothing to do when we go to bed. It just a time when we stop looking at the clock. That means that in my case, I stopped looking at the clock at about 10 p.m. and I set my alarm for 7 o'clock in the morning. Now, I chose 7 in the morning because that time works perfectly for me. It's not something that I have to do for now. It's something that I can do permanently. Whether it's during the week or the weekends, it really doesn't make a difference. On the weekends, I work on Saturdays, and so 7 o'clock in the morning is perfectly fine for me to get up, have plenty of time to get up and go to work. Sundays, I go to church. So all 7 days a week, 7 o'clock in the morning is the time for me to get up. So very easy. There's no major adjustments for me to worry or focus on. 10 o'clock at night, generally anytime after 9, pretty much, I don't take any phone calls or I don't really do anything that requires me to be available for anybody else. I'm generally home with the family. And so that time is my time. So what I've done is anytime after 10, I don't look at the clock and I just try and go about my night enjoying and seeing what feels more comfortable. What's interesting about this is about a year into my insomnia, I was really focused on tracking my sleep. So I had an Apple Watch that would track how long I slept. But more important, I was so focused on the moment I woke up to look at the time. Because to me, if I slept an hour or 3 hours, it didn't matter as much. My focus was, did I sleep? And if I slept, to me, again, the story that I created in my head was, well, if I did it once, I can do it again tonight. So I would generally fall back asleep and wake up pretty regularly. But my immediate go to was to always reach for my phone and see what time it was to know if I had slept and how much I'd slept. So when I started this program, I remember joining the immunity calls and speaking to the coaches. And I remember as they talked about the timeless sleep window, I completely disagreed with the whole concept. For me, it seemed like the joy that I was feeling at nights by looking at the clock was going to be taken from me. There was something else I had to do. And I didn't adjust to that very well. I didn't even consider doing it. I remember for months as I would mention, I would think about it. I thought, no, this is not for me. This is for other people. My insomnia is very unique. I'm unique. And so I need to know what time it is. And this brings me comfort. As time went by, I noticed that I started really paying a lot of attention and focusing on the amount of hours I was sleeping. And I started creating a threshold, meaning anytime I slept under 4 hours, I generally struggled that day. If I slept longer than 4 hours, I felt like it was much more manageable and I can go about my day so much better. But what I learned is in one of my calls with the coaches, we talked about how the brain is always scanning, is monitoring. The brain seeks control, kind of like a pit bull. And when it finds it, it clamps down and it won't let go. It becomes very focused on the information that's being given, and then it starts to create a story. And the more it creates a story, the more it kind of solidifies our beliefs. And so we truly become more rigid, more strict to this. And I didn't see that at first. I really thought this was something that was very helpful for me. What the timeless window does, it actually teaches us to let go. So if I no longer know what time it is, I have no idea how much I slept. And so I no longer rely on information coming in and telling me how I should feel. I need to go, well, not need to go. I tend to go more by how I actually feel. And so there was, I think it took maybe a couple of months before I decided to implement this concept. And I remember the night I decided to do it. I thought, why should I do this? I mean, I understand there's some control needs, but it's comforting. So there's definitely a bit of a struggle. But I thought, okay, well, I'm going to start it tonight and see how I do. So I remember falling asleep, waking up in the middle of the night. I had no idea what time it was. And there was just such an internal struggle, such a fight for me to not look at the time. And then I realized, oh my goodness, I'm desperately seeking control because it's just the middle of the night. I'm safe. There's nothing to worry about. But this attachment, just like a pit bull that I had over looking at the time, I noticed had a lot of pressure. There was a lot of anxiety. I remember the first night almost even having a panic attack, not knowing what time it was. I felt so helpless. I felt so lost and confused. So I realized that what I initially felt was very comforting and brought me peace was misguided. It was the brain seeking this control. And in doing so, I really needed to take a different approach. And so, what the timeless sleep window did was a couple of things. Number one, when I started to not look at the time anymore, I started realizing how rigid uh, I was at nights and how looking at the clock was just creating a lot more anxiety. So as I started to just let go, I started realizing, and now this definitely took time. This wasn't a matter of days or weeks. This definitely took a while for me to start feeling more comfortable. But I started noticing how much more relaxed I was, how when I woke up in the mornings, I didn't feel that anxiety and didn't look for a time to determine what my day was going to be like. I just kind of checked in with myself to see how I felt and just went about my day. So I definitely felt a lot less pressure. Now it's amazing how it's so freeing. It's such a special time for me because it's the only time, right, during our 24 hours where we don't need to be anywhere. We don't need to make any phone calls, receive any phone calls, run any errands. It's just our time. And so it's definitely been able to bring down a lot of that fear, that anxiety, that rigidity, and it's allowed me to also be less attached to the outcome, right? Because since I have no control of or any knowledge of how much I'm sleeping, I really don't have any control of the outcome either. And so these little um, lessons that we're learning right now are really helpful as we progress in our journey because so much of it is about being less rigid, having less control. So if we go back to the question that we're looking at, it says, if I get rid of hyperarousal, fear of insomnia, and anxiety, right? So we're trying to deal with all these different feelings and sensations. We're hoping that this other concept will finally get us to feel less tired and exhausted and be able to sleep well. As we practice a timeless sleep window, we start to learn and allow a lot of these feelings of fear and anxiety to be with us, to be for us to be present with them, and just know that we're safe. And so this was a wonderful exercise for me to when I was feeling anxious, like I mentioned, I felt like I was going to have a panic attack because I didn't know what time it was. I just realized that I kept repeating to myself, I'm safe. There is nothing that's going to harm me at this time. This may be a bit unpleasant, uncomfortable, but what I started learning to be with these feelings. And the more I was with these feelings, again, wasn't easy at first, but I started to get a little bit more callous and I was a little bit less sensitive, and I responded more neutral to these feelings of fear and anxiety. And so, what I would say to answer your question is we're not going to get rid of this fear of anxiety, for example. The fear of insomnia is going to be there for a while because anything that triggers us fear, it's going to take a little while for us to retrain the brain to realize that it is only a perceived fear, right? The hyperarousal is caused by so many things, but it makes us feel very wired. And how we go about letting go of that is experiencing these sensations, these heavy panic attacks, feelings of anxiety in the middle of the night. So the timeless sleep window can certainly start teaching us to let go of certain things and allow us to know how to better handle these feelings that we're going through, that we're experiencing. So the timeless sleep window can allow us with time to sleep better and feeling less exhausted. But again, this is going to be a process. This is going to take some time. But what was so critical for me was to realize that this rigidity of wanting to track my sleep wasn't really helpful. It was a desperate form of me to try and find some degree of control during the nighttime when I felt completely out of control. None of the concepts taught here are there to force them or make you do them. This is information for us to take in, to look at it, consider it, and seeing if maybe implementing these concepts will be a better approach, a better way for you during your insomnia journey. And as I experimented, as I tried these new concepts, I really started noticing how beneficial they were. So nothing is there to be rigid, to force you to go down the list and implement these things. But as I started learning these different concepts being taught in the program, I definitely saw a lot less fear, anxiety. I felt much more at peace, and I was able to start sleeping so much better. So that is all for this week. I want to thank you all for your questions and comments, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye.
Hi there, Coach Dial here, and I hope you thoroughly enjoyed the video that you just saw. If you are finding yourself thinking a lot about what your life would be like if you weren't struggling with sleep, if you had bandwidth for everything else in life that you want to do, if you felt like yourself again, if you didn't even give the night a second thought, well, then I have news for you. Leaving the struggle is actually so much easier than we often think. Everything that you need truly is out here on our channel in our free content. The one thing that can be tricky though is that sometimes you don't really see where you are not contextualizing the teachings to yourself. And what also can be tricky is that it can feel a bit lonely and isolating to leave the struggle on your own. If this applies to you, then head over to thesleepcoachschool.com, because we have programs where you can join a community of people that are leaving the struggle, which is led by coaches who have already done so. And so if this, again, sounds like something you'd be interested in, head over to our website, thesleepcoachschool.com, and check out our Insomnia Immunity program. And if you decide to join, we can't wait to see you on the other side.